Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. 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 Yamuna Thira Vanachari. Yamuna Thira Vanachari. Jai Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatiravanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari Bol Jayam Vishnupad Paramsarjika Acharya Stotra Shata Shri Shrimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Nama Acharya Srila Thakur Haridas Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kund Radha Kundir Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Ganga Devi Ki Jai Vanamai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulasi Rani Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Harinama Sankirtana Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad-Bhagavatam Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Go Premanandi All glories to the Assembled devotees All glories to the Assembled devotees All glories to the Assembled devotees All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga Jai Srila Prabhupada Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Gnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroh Shri Utaparakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Does anyone have any particular topic or verse that you would like to hear about? I haven't planned anything. If not, if someone can hand me this book. Thank you. Bhagavad-gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. I'll read today from text number 7 of the 10th chapter. 10th chapter is entitled The Opulence of the Absolute. This is a fairly well-known verse. Krishna says, Etam vibhutim yogam cha mama yo veti tattvataha so vikalpena yogena yujyate natra sangshayaha. One who is factually convinced of this opulence and mystic power of mine engages in unalloyed devotional service. Of this there is no doubt. So what opulence is he talking about? The previous verse said, the 7 great sages, and before them the 4 other great sages, and the Manus, progenitors of mankind, come from me, born from my mind, and all the living entities populating the various planets descend from them. Then he naturally concludes, one who is factually convinced of this opulence and mystic power of mine engages in unalloyed devotional service. Of this there is no doubt. Let us hear what Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport. The highest summit of spiritual perfection is knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Unless one is firmly convinced of the different opulences of the Supreme Lord, he cannot engage in devotional service. Generally, people know that God is great, but they do not know in detail how God is great. Here are the details. If one knows factually how God is great, then naturally he becomes a surrendered soul and engages himself in the devotional service of the Lord. When one factually knows the opulences of the Supreme, there is no alternative but to surrender to Him. This factual knowledge can be known from the description in Srimad-Bhagavatam and Bhagavad-gita and similar literatures. In the administration of this universe, there are many demigods distributed throughout the planetary system, and the chief of them are Brahma, Lord Shiva, and the 4 great Kumaras and other patriarchs. There are many forefathers of the population of the universe, and all of them are born of the Supreme Lord, Krishna. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the original forefather of all forefathers. These are some of the opulences of the Supreme Lord. When one is firmly convinced of them, he accepts Krishna with great faith and without any doubt, and he engages in devotional service. All this particular knowledge is required in order to increase one's interest in the loving devotional service of the Lord. One should not neglect to understand fully how great Krishna is, for by knowing the greatness of Krishna, one will be able to be fixed in sincere devotional service. We find throughout the Bhagavad-gita, Krishna says in as many ways the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, that if someone actually understands his greatness, then that person is naturally inspired to render devotional service. We were discussing this the other night. I think it was in Bellingham, Washington. And the idea is that hearing means acting. Srila Prabhupada used to often say, hearing means acting. If you hear what the speaker says and you do not respond to that appropriately, then you've really not heard what was said. If I ask, please bring me a glass of water, and you very scrupulously take notes and listen very carefully and with undivided attention, you hear what I'm saying, but you do not follow the instruction, then you're not really hearing, no matter how hard you're hearing. So this is described in the Srimad-Bhagavatam in a very nice phrase. Pashyannapi na pashyati. Although seeing, he doesn't see. And we have in the world too many. Ad nauseum. We have so many people who have very, very passionate faith. Really, I should say ignorant faith. But to use the phrase, passionate faith in God. But they do not have a very clear understanding of God. And Srila Prabhupada is nailing this point here in this purport when he says, generally people know that God is great, but they do not know in detail how God is great. There are even some, we know, Allahu Akbar. And similarly, there are many people who have very deep faith that they would like to impress upon us. There are many very active evangelists in this world, preaching their particular stripe of religious conviction, however deep it is. But if you think about it, or if you look at it in terms of knowledge, you get a sense, you get an intuition even without knowledge. But if you have knowledge, you begin to understand how that faith is not really so great. It's not really that great. Because when one actually has faith, he acts on that faith, or she acts on that faith. And that's why knowledge is important. That's why Krishna has said here, so we're really talking about 2 verses tonight, text 6, I'll go back. Maharshaya sapta purve chatvaro manavastatha madbhava manasa jata yesham loka imaha prajaha. The 7 great sages, and before them the 4 other great sages, and the Manus, progenitors of mankind, come from me, born from my mind. And all the living beings populating the various planets descend from them. Now, this means nothing to us, because we don't even know who the Manus are, do we? Raise your hand if you know who the Manus are. One hand goes up, and that's because he's an instructor. He knows. We don't even realize what we don't know. This is the problem. If we begin to get an inkling that we don't know something bigger than ourselves, that's called humility. When we understand very clearly what it is that we don't know and how much we don't know, that's called knowledge. And Krishna is mentioning all these things in Bhagavad-gita just to increase our sense of understanding of how great he is. This is how we begin to understand how God is great, as Prabhupada is saying, how God is great. So, we have 7 sages. Here in Seattle, we don't really see the stars in the sky at night because it's always cloudy. But in some places, when you look up into the evening sky, you can see 7 stars, is it not? They're considered to be 7 sages. They're very important in universal mid-level cosmic management, we might say. And we also have 4 great sages. It would appear that we're talking about the Chatusanas, the 4 Kumaras. Young children, only 5 years old, but very profound, prakand pandits, very profound learning they have. Very advanced devotees also. They have their own Vaishnava Sampradaya, in fact. And then we're talking about the Manus. Does anybody know how many Manus there are? How many? 14, but that's only one day, Baba. How many are going by in Brahma's year? You can't begin to calculate. There are so many manvantaras. These are administrations within the cosmic management, scheme of cosmic management. And the scope of time that we're talking about here is really beyond our comprehension. If we are exclusively educated and socialized with the worldview that assumes that man is the measure of all things, then we can't even begin to conceive of how vast is this scope of time. But Krishna has discussed it elsewhere in the Bhagavad-gita. I don't want to get into the details, but Here Prabhupada is writing that the Lord is giving a genealogical synopsis of the universal population. Brahma is the original creature born out of the energy of the Supreme Lord, who is known as Hiranyagarbha. And from Brahma, all the 7 great sages, and before them the 4 other great sages, namely Sanaka, Sananda, Sanatan, and Sanat Kumar, and the 14 Manus are manifested. All these 25 great sages are known as the patriarchs of the living entities all over the universe. There are innumerable universes and innumerable planets within each universe. And each planet is full of population of different varieties. All of them are born of these 25 patriarchs. Brahma underwent penances for 1,000 years of the demigods before he realized, by the grace of Krishna, how to create. Then, from Brahma came Sanaka, Sanandan, Sanatan, and Sanat Kumar. Then Rudra, and then the 7 great sages, and in this way all the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas are born out of the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Brahma is known as Pitamaha, the grandfather, and Krishna is known as Prapitamaha, the father of the grandfather. That is stated in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad-gita in text number 39. So, we have to know about the opulence of the Lord. We have to know about the energies of God. We have to understand this world in order to really get a sense of how big is this person that we're dealing with, God. How he's the supreme person. What does it mean? It doesn't really mean much until we understand how material nature works. That's why we find the fantastic diversity and complex and sophisticated knowledge that we find in the Vedic literatures. It's very highly developed, and it's intended mainly to ultimately produce this effect, that Bahunam Janmanam Ante Gnanavan Mam Prapadyate Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. It's ultimately meant to inspire at least one person, or all of us but one at a time, to surrender to Krishna. Because that is ultimately our eternal constitutional position. So we need to understand how material nature is working. Now, let's just consider, for example, I'm just going to random pick out, and here we have chapter 15. Krishna says a few things here. He says, Gam avishya bhutani dharayami aham ojasa pushnami chaushadhi sarvaha somo bhutva rasatmakaha. Anyone know this verse? You may have heard it. It means, Krishna is speaking to Arjuna. He says, I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon, and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. What in the world does that mean? Shall I read it again? I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon, and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. It's very hard to understand this verse in English. Actually, it's a lot harder to understand it in English than it is to understand it in Sanskrit. But not many people know. Gam avishya, entering into the earth, chabhutani, dharayami. I maintain, or I hold up, all the living entities in this world. How does he do that? Aham ojasa. Ojasa pushnami. Through ojas, I nourish everyone. What is ojas? Anybody studied Ayurveda here? We have this, what do we have? Bastir University nearby, don't we? So what's ojas? Ojas is like, you can say, the lubricant that allows prana to circulate through the physical body. Prana is, of course, another category that we don't understand in modern science, although we all have to undergo its effects. Anyway, prana is the energy that actually sustains the universe, but it cannot be accessed without ojas. And Krishna is saying that through this ojas that I supply, I sustain all beings. Pushnami, choshati saravaha. And I am the active ingredient in all medicines. Oshati means medicine. Especially in Ayurveda, you want to have very pure medicine and fresh as well, because it retains its life. Anybody know the difference between living water and dead water? We don't even know that. So it's hard to explain things because it requires several levels of explanation. That's how out of touch with even nature we've become. We're not even talking about spiritual knowledge yet. We're talking about how this world works. My doctor told me only drink live water, living water. That means spring water. And even the spring water, you have to drink it now out of these plastic bottles that they tell us are carcinogenic. So it makes you wonder, and where is the plastic going when you're done with it? It also makes you wonder, what's the point? But dead water means if you stop water from flowing in its natural course for some length of time, it eventually dies, because the prana requires that movement to keep going and to stay alive. This is why it's such a disaster. Does anybody know the what is his name? I think Sundar Lal Bahuguna. Anybody ever heard this name? If you're from the Himachal Pradesh and from that area, you may know. Very famous figure in the Chipko movement he started, famous in dam politics as well. He said that the Yamuna River has been dead for a long time. It's possible to kill a goddess. Vallabhacharya has described this as only Vallabhacharya would. That the Yamuna River exists in a few forms. And at the adibhautic level, that is to say, just merely at the physical level, we perceive water. And that water is something that we only can appreciate in terms of our immediate need for it, for human use. That's an adibhautic appreciation of the Yamuna River. It's quite obvious that we don't have a very highly developed realization, even at the adibhautic level, of what the Yamuna can do for us. Because the Yamuna's, polluted many, many times over the legal amount that's required now. Many times, about 20 times if I'm not mistaken. And that's that's biodegradable pollutants, not to speak of the ones that are harder to break down. But that's at the adibhautic level. At the adhyatmic level, we can appreciate the fact that Yamuna has the potency to destroy sins and to elevate us to the platform of liberation, spiritual existence, just by bathing in the Yamuna. And the Gangas, there are many holy rivers throughout India. They have this sacred property. So that's an adhyatmic appreciation of the Yamuna. But the adhidaivik appreciation of Yamuna is even more subtle than that. Because at the adhidaivik level, we realize that this person is a Patarani of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. She's very, very close to him. On account of her intimacy with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, she can pull us into that same internal field in pure devotional service, if that's what we appreciate. So, adhyatmic, adhidaivik, and adhibhautic levels of existence are three categories that we find in the second canto of the Srimad-Bhagavatam in the 10th chapter. And we generally hear about them in terms of the miseries that they inflict upon us when we don't properly understand them. We have adhyatmic klesh. That means internal baggage, because mostly people suffer in the head nowadays, especially in America. Modern culture in general, if you want to call it culture. And then the adhidaivik sufferings, these are like, for example, we just had some floods. I was going to go to Shimla and spend the hot season in Shimla this year, but I'm actually kind of glad I didn't do that. Because if you've been following the news, there's a lot of floods up there, and a lot of people have been killed even. Very dangerous situation. That's what happens when a goddess strikes back, I suppose. But, which some people say she's fully entitled to do. So, Adi, Daivik Klesh. Adhyatmic Klesh means what's inside of our bodies. We may be crippled, or we may have some disease that's a hassle to deal with, or we may have mental problems. This is all Adhyatmic. Adhi Daivik means through fate we have to suffer in some way like this. We get floods, we get here, of course, we have earthquakes. California, they have wildfires. Now Arizona's burning up as well. Nobody's giving Agni anything to eat, so he has got to take it every summer, at least in Southern California. He eats up half the state every year in the summertime. And that's called Adhidaivik Klesh. And then Adhibautic Klesh is the physical miseries, and particularly dealing with other beings in this world, animate or inanimate. So, like mosquitoes who give you malaria, or like viruses that give you AIDS, for example. These are called Adhibautic Klesh. So we know about these three levels of existence, Adhibautic, Adhyatmic, and Adhidaivik, mainly through the miseries that we have to deal with out of ignorance. But if we cultivate knowledge of how the principles of material nature are working, not even spiritual nature, look at the facade of a South Indian temple. You get staggering complexity, isn't it? That's what this material world is actually like. It really is like that. It's infinite diversity. And one really has to cultivate an awareness of what is this diversity, why does it matter, where does it come from, why are things the way they are. This is what it means to understand how God is great. To return to the point. He told me not to drink dead water. So living water means it cannot be dammed up like this. Now, you mentioned the other day, 90% of the Yamana's water is dammed before it even leaves, before it even reaches the plains. And, by some standards, that kills the water, at least, in the subtle level. But anyway, if we drink pure water that has pran still, then it nourishes this ojas. We get it through the moon. The sun burns us up. And that's why, if we are not careful with our exposure to electromagnetic frequencies, then we get burned up also. And it ultimately causes problems for the health. Because the sun is very powerful, it must be balanced by the moon. All energy in this world is going on the basis of Soma, Agni, and Vayu. And these are three very powerful demigods. So the great sages, they know about these things, and they have given us this wisdom, but it only takes one generation of neglect, being asleep at the wheel, and it's all gone, and it might as well have never existed, because it just turns into mythology, and even the memory of that, it eventually evaporates. That's what we're witnessing now, especially in India, where I live, which is why I know. But if we have a sense of the time span that we're dealing with here, with these 14 manus, and if we understand just how great is the knowledge of these 7 sages, and then we begin to consider what Krishna is telling us here, that all of these come from him, then that leads us to this conclusion of Vasudeva Sarvamiti. It's all Vasudeva. I've got to surrender to him. It's a long process in general, but there's an easy way out of this. There's an easy shortcut by which all the imports of the Vedas are automatically revealed, according to what is literally the last word of the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Anybody know the verse? Yasya deve parabhaktir yatha deve tatha gurao tasya iti katitha hi arthaha prakashante mahatmanaha. That person is a great soul when he surrenders unto the lotus feet of the bona fide spiritual master and is able to place equal trust in his guru and in Krishna. Now, it's not a coincidence when Krishna says in Bhagavad-gita, Samahatma Sadurlabha, that person, when he's full in knowledge, surrenders unto me, and such a great soul is very rare. And when the Shvetashvatara Upanishad says that the person who is maintaining equal faith in Guru and Krishna is such a great soul, it's not coincidental. They're describing exactly the same thing. So it's generally a long ways to go. But if we can chant the holy name, which is given to us free of charge in this otherwise most fallen of ages, the Kali Yuga. Krite yad dhyayatom vishnum dvapare paricharyaya. And tretayam yajatom akhai kalo tadhari kirtanat. What we gained by meditating, say, for 60,000 years, sometimes people did this in the Satya Yuga, what we could offer in sacrifice in the Treta Yuga with expensive materials and costly ghee and everything. It's described in the Bhagavatam that Maharaj Mantata, he was up in the Kashmir region, and when he was offering sacrifices, he was using pure gold for the plates and the patras and the koshi and panchpatras and also other things that we use for sacrifices. Pure gold. And his kingdom was so opulent that he was able to just leave the gold there because they didn't want to clean it up. Now after there's a big function, last night we had 4th of July, right? Lots of people took their kids there to watch the fireworks. There's nothing left but styro plates. Cigarette butts, empty bottles of hopefully spring water, and But imagine a culture in which you've got pure gold to throw around like that. He did. So in the Treta Yuga, people could offer costly sacrifices, and in Dwapar Yuga, still, if you go like, say, for example, Sri Rangam and other temples, ancient temples in the south, they're 1,000 years old. And even that was the most recent renovation. They're going back even before that. To offer such fabulous, opulent deity worship. Even still in some places we can find it. Anyone here ever been to Nathdwara in Rajasthan? Those who are followers of the Pushti Marg, that's the disciplic succession ultimately from Rudra, and going through Vishnu Swami and later Vallabhacharya. They also do very, very elaborate and very, very careful deity worship. So that was the main process in the Dwapara Yuga, but all the results of doing all these things in previous yugas you can get in one lifetime if you very, very sincerely devote yourself simply to chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Now how do you properly chant the holy name of Krishna? We know from Padma Purana, there are 10 aparadhas that we must try to avoid when we accept the holy name. Without going into details, the idea is that if we cultivate sambandha gyan, which is to say, knowledge of our relationship with the Supreme Lord, knowledge of the relationships that we have with each other, knowledge of the interrelationships that all things have with all other things. This is all part of sambandha gyan, and it's what Krishna is getting at in today's verse. When he says that somebody who actually has this depth of knowledge, he's able to chant without offense because he understands how great I am, and he's prepared, therefore, to surrender to me. Until that point, we have conscious as well as subconscious illusions and misconceptions and ignorance about the nature of God, that we think we don't require him, we think he doesn't exist a lot of the time, or we want to exploit him sometimes. We just want to get him out of the picture a lot of the time. This is the problem. See, that is what gets in the way. That's called ajnan. So, sambandha is the beginning step. If you don't have some theoretical concept of what things are really about, then there's no question of acting properly, which is the next step, abhideya. And then without abhideya, without following the process, you cannot reach the goal, which is called prayojana. So sambandha, abhideya, and prayojana, these are three things that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has discussed. All of reality can be interpreted in terms of these three. So when we have sambandha gyan, then we're less inclined to offend the holy name. As long as we're chanting with offenses, then the holy name does not really manifest his true form to us as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as long as that's the case, then we don't really surrender. We don't get the true benefit, the ultimate benefit. We get benefit, but it's going very slowly. Just like there was one of these Akbar and Birbal stories. Somehow they had some argument, and so Birbal very cleverly, told Akbar, you come and see me tomorrow and I'll tell you, if you think it's really that hard to make spiritual advancement, I'll tell you why. So he came to him for his lunch appointment, and when he came in the courtyard and he saw there was a fire in the courtyard, and suspended about 30 feet off of the fire there was a pot of khichdi cooking. So being intelligent, Akbar could immediately understand the point. If you want it to cook, you've got to get it closer to the fire. So this is the idea. That means we have to really sincerely follow the process with Sambandha Gyan. And then when we do that, it's very, very easy. All we have to do is chant Hare Krishna even once. And we can not only become freed from more sins than we can possibly commit, but we can also get this prema, this divine love of Godhead that we mentioned earlier. So that's called, in the words of Srimad-Bhagavatam, Mukta Bandha Param Vrajet. One gets freed from the ugliness, and one also goes to the supreme destination. Now, if there's a fast track to getting the blessings that allows us to develop this Sambandha Gyan and to chant the holy name of Krishna without offense, that is to serve the pure devotees, and in particular to get the blessings of a bona fide spiritual master in Krishna consciousness, because it's not just a matter of being awakened to the truth or being enlightened with knowledge or learning so many things. It's also about being sponsored, because this is not a mechanical process. Although it's virtually guaranteed, we read that last night, that anybody who follows this process and makes advancement through it, he will be able to attain transcendental love for Krishna. So many people have done so in the past, but it's not automatic. It's mercy. It's divine grace. If Krishna wants, he can give it to us for free. Just like sometimes someone will get an honorary degree without even attending the classes in the college. We can't expect that, but it does happen. And in the same way, if we somehow or other get the blessings of Krishna's beloved devotees, then by that, the sponsorship of those devotees, by their good graces, then Krishna will be more pleased and inclined to reveal himself to us. These are just a few things we can think about with regards to these verses, but I'll stop here. And if anybody has any questions or any comments, please feel free. Yeah, please, all the way in the back. Sorry? Can you revive dead water? I don't know that. I'm not that. I don't know. I really don't know. You have to ask somebody who's. Sorry. Anything else? I mean, in Vrindavan where I live, I have a water for purification system, and it goes through UV and everything, and it's just like really dead. But in Vrindavan, you're lucky to get any kind of water, so what to say? Kali Yuga Esaha. Yeah. You had your hand up or no? Yeah, please. Well, there's just one verse that actually mentions this triad there of the adhyatmic and adhidaivic and adhibhautic levels of existence. And not every acharya actually makes much of that verse. But it definitely is something that Vallabhacharya has based almost his entire philosophical system on. In much the same way that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sees things in terms of these three categories of Sambandha, Abhideya, Prayojan. So he sees it in those terms, and I've explained exactly how he interprets our experience of the Yamuna River in that light. And it's certainly worth considering, because one scholar from University of Indiana named David Haberman, who is very sympathetic to Krishna-bhakti, practitioner of sorts, he's written a nice book about the Yamuna. It's called River of Love in an Age of Pollution. And he points out that the kind of person who is more inclined to pollute the Yamuna is the person who does not maintain or cultivate, the awareness of the Yamuna's adhidaivic position, the Yamuna's identity as a goddess. I mean, you can't really urinate on your mother, can you? And yet that's what the city of Delhi does, because virtually not a drop of water leaves the city of Delhi pure. It's either been through a factory or it's been through a human body. And then it's returned to the Yamuna River Basin, and then it goes down to Vrindavan like that. Virtually zero of the original water flowing from the Himalayas of the Yamuna is actually still Yamuna water. That's something that many people are trying to agitate against now, in much the same way that they had a Ganga action plan some 20 or 30 years ago. Now they have YAP. So they're yapping a lot, but there's not really a whole lot that is tangibly done about it. But hote. Drops of water wear away the stone. And when our hearts are like stone, let us hope that it's Yamuna water wearing it away. Because that is the effect at the adhidaivic level. Is that okay? Anything else? If not, it's getting late, so I'll stop here. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.